Hi guys, in this video we're going to have a look at another vintage reloading tool. In this case we've got a Lee loader in front of us, and this particular Lee loader is a shot shell loader, and it's for the 410 3-inch shell. Now the Lee loaders, as far as I know, were made in 10 gauge, 12 gauge, 16, 20, and 410. As far as I know, they didn't make any in 28 gauge, but I could be wrong on that one. This is probably the most desirable of these Lee loaders to have. They are kind of hard to come by in 410 shell size. There's loads of them around in 12 gauge, quite a few in 20 gauge. The 16s are a little harder to find, the 10 gauges are harder yet to find, and the 410 seems to be the hardest to get your hands on. Now, these often command quite a premium because of the gauge. And for instance, a 12 gauge Lee loader would sell for probably $15 to $30, whereas these can go for as much as, I've seen them $75 to $120 for a loader, which in my opinion is getting a little ridiculous. I lucked out on this one. I was at a gun show. There was an older gentleman that had this on his table with no price on it, and when I asked him how much he was looking for, he said 25 bucks, which I thought was reasonable, so that's what I paid for this one. I got it for $25. Anyway, let's have a look at it. It's in the old style, one of the older style two-piece slip-top cardboard boxes, not the plastic style that they use later on. And we've got underneath the cover there, we've got our charge table, which if you put it in the proper way, the tab hangs down below the edge of the box, so when you have them stacked up, you can see what gauge or caliber you're looking at. Very simple charge table with this one. And you can see the copyright date on that, 1969. So, this was obviously made in the late 60s, early 70s. And we've got our one single charge, which they recommend for this particular loader, which is 3/4 of an ounce a shot, and 15.2 grains of Hercules 2400, and 35 pounds of wad pressure. So, pretty simple instructions that came with that tool. Under that, we have the instructions. We'll have a look at those a little bit more later on. And we've got a little sleeve with an accessory here. We'll look at that later too. We've got a styrofoam divider, and you can see by the condition of this, it looks like it was barely ever used. There's not even any dirt on it, so really good shape, this tool. Starting over on the left hand side, we've got the body of the tool here, which is used for various of operations when you're loading shells. We've got the ram that goes inside that. Next over, we've got a plastic powder dipper, and this is in the old style Lee, I think it's cubic inches measurement, so this is 0.69. The later ones, the current type ones, are in cubic centimeters, so that's the old style one. Sometimes you will see these in red as well as black. The next thing over is an expander, which is used to flare open the mouth of the shells before you put wads in. In later style tools, you will usually find a fingered type wad guide, which would replace that, but that will work with either plastic wads or with fiber wads, depending on what you're loading. Next, we've got the shot measure. I'll get this in close enough where you can focus on it, and you can see it says 3/4 of an ounce, and that's a nice aluminum measure with a steel handle and a plastic grip on it. Kind of a nicely made little measure. Next over from that, we've got the decapping rod. That's the end that goes in the shell. You strike that in with your plastic mallet. And over here we've got the recapping rod, which is this end is put in the shell. This end is struck with a hammer, so that's used to tap a fresh primer into your shell. And they gave us one extra little doodad here. You can see it says spacer for Remington plastic shells. Apparently at that point in time, the Remington plastic 3-inch shells were only 2 7/8 of an inch long, so they gave you a little metal spacer which you put underneath the shell so that you could get it crimped properly. That would force it farther up into the body of the tool there to get a crimp on it. Now, this tool here, it will do roll crimps, or it will do fold crimps. Depending on what your shell originally had, you can perform either of those operations with that little tool. So that's kind of a handy feature to have, because roll crimping is advantageous when you're using some of the larger shot charges in the 410. So let's have a look at the instructions. And fairly standard instructions. They show the adjustable shot measure, which they would have given you with the other gauges. Of course, there's no point in using that measure with the 410 because it holds far too much shot. And it goes through all the various details of the shells, and it gives you all the instructions on how to load. So if there's sufficient interest, I can do another video showing this in action, and I can actually load some shells with this if you guys want to see that. But at the moment I just thought I'd show you the tool itself, and like I said, if you want to see me load some shells with this, we can do that later on. So anyway, have a good day guys, and we'll talk to you later.